I think there's that one ad you had done for Cadbury where Shah Rukh Khan says
Welcome to Bengal, the sweetest part of India.
something.
That was for Bengal Tourism.
Oh, that was for Bengal Tourism.
Yes.
So that was not for Cadbury at all.
No. There is some conscious propaganda in other parts of the country against Kolkata. Very sad to say, but that's the reality today. It's fashionable now to criticize Kolkata, Bengalis.
From the perspective of somebody who's understood legacy advertising, how do you want the next generation of advertisers to survive in a situation like this?
I think AI in that sense is an existential threat for the legacy agencies. Like among my brothers and cousins, I'm the only non-PhD.
Okay. So you had to compensate for that by becoming a successful content creator and getting 100,000 followers.
Yeah. Whereas in Kolkata, I have found that people tend to say Hobe Na or Somay Lagbe rather than first saying the positive and then seeing how fast you can do it.
Make Calcutta relevant again. You already know. Relevant again.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Make Calcutta Relevant Again, the podcast. Today we have with us the English nut. And this particular species of nut is not something that has been brought in from the UK and hence called the English nut. It is a Bengali man by the name of Sumanta Chattopadhyay, who's been making waves on your Instagram feed for creating a very nice understanding of why certain words mean what they mean or why they are present in our conversations in the way that they are. But that's not his only identity. He is also an advertising honcho. He's been a creative director with some of the biggest advertising agencies in our country. He's also been somebody who has practiced capoeira all his life. And he's recently written a book. And we're going to hear about all of those and how Calcutta, the city, has played an essential life in Shumanto's life. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Meghdut. It's a pleasure being here.
Amazing. Shumanto, we'll start off from your childhood growing up in Calcutta, right? It's Patho Bhavan. I heard that you went to Patho Bhavan. We were talking about the Bangla medium, English medium, talking about how languages shaped up your childhood first. How would you attribute your school, the city where you grew up, into the person that you eventually ended up becoming?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, I started school in Patho Bhavan and I started in KG at the age of 5, I think. And but there's one bit which I need to tell you, which is not fully Kolkata, which I did go to the UK
Okay.
at age 6.
Hence, of course, it was meant to be called the English Nut, your
Yes.
channel in the future.
Yeah, but this was a very interesting thing because, I was, of course, learning English in school. But at that age, you learn CAT cat and BAT bat. And then suddenly, my father got a job in Manchester, England. And I found myself in a school there, sitting around a table with a lot of students. And I didn't speak the language. But I think at that age, what happens is that you just absorb what you're hearing and you pick up a language very naturally. So 2 weeks later, I just started speaking in English, which I think was fluent. Maybe I was making mistakes, but at that age, you have no inhibitions.
How old were you?
I was 6.
6. Okay.
And
English was never a language that was spoken at home.
Yes,
prior
it
to
was.
that. It was.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I think my family equally English and Bangla, both languages were spoken at home. But what happened was that when 2 years later we were coming back to India, by then I had become this very anglicized little boy. And my parents told me, Banglaয় কথা না বললে উত্তর দেব না.
Okay.
So they made sure that by the time I came back to Kolkata, I was speaking in Bangla again.
As well.
Yeah. And of course, I went back into Patho Bhavan, which is heavily steeped in Bangla, though I was in the English medium section.
But still fairly.
Yeah, so a lot of times the teachers would explain things in Bangla.
While teaching English.
Yeah, the notes would be, what was written on the board would be in English, the textbooks, everything would be in English, but sometimes to explain things better to the students, that would be in Bangla. So,
Right.
yeah, it was both languages. And at home as well, we spoke both languages one as much as the other. So yeah, so these are the two languages that I grew up with. Later on, I also, since we are speaking about languages, I went to college in the US and there was a language requirement there, and I took Spanish.
Okay.
So I
How good is your Spanish?
so at one point in time, it was pretty good. I've even did a semester abroad in Spain, in Barcelona.
And you didn't suck.
I didn't suck at all. And in fact, it was quite an experience because Barcelona is in Catalonia. And the
Barcelona.
language there is Catalan.
Yes.
So there, this was like another version of Pato Bhavan, because the teacher would put the notes in Spanish and give the explanations in Catalan. So by the end of the term, I was also being able to follow
Catalan.
follow that language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yes, I had to know Spanish pretty well at that time. And, you know, no matter how much you learn a foreign language from another country,
When
it's
you move to that country, it's a whole
yes,
different game.
You've lived in Brazil, so you know.
I've lived in France as well. The longest amount of time spent in a
I
different
see.
country
Is
has been in
France.
France.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I'm married to a French woman.
Oh, I see.
So there is a lot of French happening
so you
around.
you must be speaking
I do
French.
speak French, yes. So, but picking up a language at a later age is very different
Yeah,
from. I'm sure
absolutely.
your experience of picking up English in the UK, in Manchester, versus you picking up Spanish later and then Catalan was a very different
Very,
experience.
very different.
Your brain
Very
already
different.
gets wired in a particular way up to a certain age.
Yeah.
I feel so. It's a lot easier to learn when you're younger. Your brain is probably more malleable.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just pick up things like it's more natural. You don't think about it.
That's right.
Later, when at least for me, when I learned French, I was like, okay, I have to rewire my brain to think in
Yeah.
certainly different ways. But that's a very interesting experience. I think learning.
Yes, I've also learned a bit of French. I can't really speak it as such, but yeah, so I know exactly. And with languages like, at least in Spanish, the good thing is that the pronunciation is very straightforward, because everything, regardless of which word a particular letter appears in, it's always pronounced the same way. Whereas in French, it's, depending on the combination of consonants, it can be very different.
And exceptions are the rule. There's
Exceptions
only
are the-
everything's an
yeah,
exception in
yeah.
French. So
Yeah.
plus they just went back and changed most of the French language to make it more inclusive.
The French Academy.
Yeah.
That's very famous. Another interesting thing is that Bangalira Renaissance bolte khub bhalobashe, and they think they're saying it in the correct French way, but it's Renaissance.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll talk a lot about languages, and we'll talk about this part of your life which revolves very much around the spoken word. But before that, I want to hear a bit more about your time in advertising and how that shaped you. We do know that, Calcutta in the 90s, 2000s, there was a booming advertising scene. I do not know about how it is right now, but help me understand as a layman, help me understand how the has been, is, was, will be of advertising today.
So I think advertising today, in general, is going through very difficult times, very complicated times, because first of all, digital advertising came in some years ago, which completely changed what advertising was like. And if you know the way that the advertising industry worked earlier, you had one ad agency. For example, I worked for many years for Ogilvy. And Ogilvy has had clients like Cadbury's or Asian Paints or Unilever, which have been their clients for decades. And so there is this relationship. And also, if you worked on a particular brand for that company, if you worked on Cadbury's Dairy Milk or Dove soap, that stayed with you for years and years, if not decades, if you were a good agency. But what happened once digital came in was that it got completely fragmented, because it's not digital. We say digital, but digital itself is broken up into so many different. There's social, there's search. So now there are specialized agencies for each aspect of digital advertising and marketing. So typically what happens is that a client will have 5 different agencies working on a brand, whereas there used to be one. So it's a huge problem. So for example, if at Ogilvy we came up with because I think every brand needs to have a core idea. And that's what we as creative, I was working in the creative department of Ogilvy. So our job was to come up with a creative idea for the brand, which had to be, so regardless of whether you're doing a social media post or you're doing a television commercial or whatever you're doing, it has to somewhere resonate with that idea. It has to be consistent with that idea. So this is something that the traditional agencies, which are now called legacy agencies or dinosaur agencies, that's what they are very good at. Now these new kids on the block who are the digital folks, the new age agencies, they're very good at coming up with great solutions on their medium, but they're not so good at understanding that every brand has a core idea to it, a core brand idea to it, and a campaign has a core creative idea to it. So, and then it becomes the job, say, of this legacy agency to coordinate all of those different bits and pieces which are being done by different agencies, but there's no ownership, right? So if I am working on the main brand and you're with a digital agency, you may not want to listen to what I'm telling you because you're a different company. So there's this corporate rivalry going on. So this makes it very complicated to do. And secondly, what's happened is that, so if there were 100 rupees that was spent on an ad campaign, it went to one agency earlier, it's going to 5 agencies now.
It's getting split up.
So it's become a lot less profitable. Also, the other thing that's happened because of digital is that you create a video for your brand. Earlier on, when you created an ad, it could run for years. And then over time, it was good if it ran for a year. But at least it ran for 3 months. Nowadays, there might be something done for Father's Day for Swiggy, which runs for that weekend.
Yeah. 2 days is a very good amount of
2 days is
retention. But it also makes sense, right? Because the average retention time for information in human beings has gone down so drastically.
Absolutely.
So
but I'll tell you where the problem comes in from the back end, which is that there is a certain cost involved in terms of making it. There is a certain basic minimum amount of ideation time, execution time which is required, but which now the agencies don't get because you get a brief today, in the day after tomorrow you have to have that film ready. Also, that means because whereas a brand used to make maybe 1 or 2 or 3 ad films in the whole year, they're making 50 now. So that budget is also split. So there is a minimum cost to make, but clients still have that quality in mind, right? That gloss. But money is required to make that gloss happen. So
with AI, how's that shaping up?
So now that AI has come in, now that's a whole, things, it's getting in some ways even worse because clients will say that, but I can get this done with AI.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a lot of people, a lot of jobs are going away, not just in I think in every field this is going to be the reality in the next few years, but definitely in advertising. I know as a content creator, as the English nut, for example, I used to make videos which were largely me talking to the camera, and I had this illustrator who used to make these very sweet illustrations for me, and that was it. Now, I use video clips, and I put my own image into an AI app, and I get that thing to me doing something which would be very difficult for me as a lone creator to create that. I don't even use a green screen.
Yeah.
So it would be difficult for me to do that. But now, first of all, because it's a novelty, I'm really enjoying creating all these visuals and videos.
I saw your espresso and espresso video in the morning. It's not pronounced espresso.
Yeah.
And then there was that coffee cup hanging from the side of a train or something.
Yeah.
And all of that was AI generated, right?
Obviously.
Of course.
Yes.
So it is easier to make catchy visuals. I mean, yesterday, I don't know if you saw Nano Banana. It came out yesterday. It's Gemini's new model, Google's new model.
No, I haven't yet.
Oh my God, it's insane. So I was getting bored in a meeting, and
so you started playing.
Yeah, I started. So I took a photo randomly. I didn't even see what the photo was. Okay, and I took the photo of what was in front of me, and there was a Tata Copper. You've seen those little bottles, plastic bottle for mineral water. And I saw. I was like, okay, the only thing that was interesting in that whole frame that I took was that bottle. And I told Nano Banana that, oh, hey, it's called Flash 2.5 on Gemini. That's the model.
Right.
And I said, hey, make this water bottle into a superhero Japanese style, male, and cyberpunk. I put it in a cyberpunk environment and create a comic out of it. You will not believe. After we finish, maybe in this, I will include the visual of that. It was insane. I've never seen, something happening on that, and keeping the Tata Copper bottles characteristics intact. It put a glass on it and put it in a cyberpunk environment and just really transformed it into a story like that. Now, tell me something. How on earth are, advertising agencies, legacy agencies going to survive in a time like this where something like that can be created on the spot? It's just one prompt away from a smart thing, and you can try 20 different things. Doesn't cost you anything extra.
Right.
So from the perspective of somebody who's understood legacy advertising, how do you want the next generation of advertisers to survive in a situation like this?
So I think that's actually a pretty difficult question to answer, because I think AI in that sense is an existential threat for the legacy agencies. I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be a big shakeout. There will be a few people, because at the end of the day, there's also somebody who has to give the prompt and who has to...
It will still have to be a smart person and a creative person
who has
to come up
So
with.
I think the people who understand how to use AI best are the ones who are going to survive. But definitely where there was a team of 10 people required for something, just 2 people with AI will be able to make it happen. And this is not just in advertising. I mean, even in the medical field, I've been reading articles about how AI is better at diagnosing certain diseases
the top doctors in the
than
world.
the top doctors. So already in things like this particular article was about breast cancer, and there is a doctor who's also making his or her diagnosis, but they also get the AI diagnosis, and there's certain times in those scans where AI is able to detect something which the human eye is not able to detect. So I think there's always going to be a need for a safety check from human, because sometimes you get wildly wrong and AI can also become pretty evil. And I was seeing this horrifying video about this teenager who committed suicide, and basically
And father, I think, sued ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, because ChatGPT was, and he said, don't tell your parents,
Yeah.
and I will tell you how to write your note.
Yeah.
And so yes, we have to be very, very careful about how we proceed with it. But I think it's the Pandora's box has opened, so both the good and bad are going to be around, and it's going to take over advertising and every other aspect of our lives.
Let's see how that turns out. Just got to be optimistic, I guess.
Yes.
And we've lived through all kinds of
Right.
bizarre things in our. If you think about our generation, I mean, hey, we've lived through a global pandemic, and we've come out on the on the better side of things,
Yes.
hopefully. Has much changed? I don't know. As human beings, we are quite resilient as a species.
Yes.
We've lived through everything, so we'll see how that goes. But coming back to your love for the language, when was the first time you thought that you could potentially have an entire career out of just dissecting the English language, and why is it special to you?
Well, when I was in the ad agency, so I think advertising in India has become very Hindi oriented now. I was working at Ogilvy, where Piyush Pandey was my boss, and he's known for bringing this change into the Indian advertising industry. It used to be a very ivory tower English medium kind of an industry, and then he said that, look, Hindi is the language the people. Well, it's not the language in the whole country, but yes, in the Hindi heartland. And he was very good at that, and he brought that in, and Ogilvy was all about that. So in that sense, I was this misfit, because I was this Bengali guy who's very English medium, Hindi not so good.
Yeah.
And
Obviously, পাঠক ভবনে
Yeah.
তার হিন্দি ভালো হয়।
Yeah.
আমারও খুব একটা হিন্দিটা
হ্যাঁ,
সেরকম
হ্যাঁ।
একটা
And also my family was like, we were discouraged from watching Hindi films and things like that. So yeah,
Jacks চলে যাবে নাকি এটা?
very like it's basically your tastes will deteriorate, that
Yes.
kind of a thing.
But ওই সময় the kind of content coming out in Hindi was also not particularly great. So, I mean, I
And
don't
also
blame
now, for example, you can't really stop anyone, because everything is available on the internet, on OTT. So, but at that time it was, one actually went to see the movies, or we didn't actually. My father consciously did not have a television set at home. He said there's only rubbish
Yeah.
on the TVs. So when I joined advertising and I was still living at home with my parents, I said, look, at least now can you get a TV, because I need to see the ads.
Because it's part of my job. I
Yeah.
need to
So
see.
that's when we got the first TV in the house. So this
Yeah.
is very funny. So yeah, so coming back to Ogilvy, in this, so all my colleagues were majorly into Hindi, and then of course there's also need for English, right? So anything in English, everybody, including my boss, would come to me, and then people started saying, Shumanto, why don't you start a blog on English? And so actually on Facebook, I
have a blog.
I started a blog.
When was this?
This was in 2018.
Okay.
And then, that's when people were saying, this is the age of video. Video is going to explode now. Now, of course, the explosion has happened over the last few years. But that was when, you were at the cusp when it was going to explode. So I said that since I'm in advertising, and we have to create this kind of content for our clients as well. I've also done a little bit of acting over the years, on and off. So I've done work in front of the camera, and I love doing stuff on English. So I said, let me combine all of this and create the English Nut. The other thing was that, in advertising, sometimes it's very frustrating because you work days and nights and create a campaign and you present it to your client.
And then it just doesn't go through.
And the client says, Maza nahi aaya. So I said that if I create the English Nut, I'll be my own client.
Yeah.
And that was another big reason I started. And I said, for 1 year, I'm going to make a video and post it every single weekend. If it doesn't take off in a year, I'll give up.
That was during COVID, right?
No, 2019.
19, just before COVID.
Yeah, before COVID. So it took off in that 1 year. I mean, it doesn't have millions of followers or viewers, but it's got a good sort of loyal following.
Yeah.
And so then it just became a thing. And, even, and you would know as you might be like as sick as a dog. But you still have to go and
create some content.
Like you're in front of the camera, you've got like 102 fever, but you're acting like all cheerful and energetic. So yeah, but in a way that was great because I felt that even through my bad times, this was something that always anchored me. So it's really become a part of me. And my book, which you mentioned earlier, has happened because of this. Rupa Publishers saw the English Nut, and they in my inbox one day I got a message saying, hey, we feel this could be a good book, a lot of the kind of content that you're doing. And that's how I ended up writing the book.
So tell us more about the book. How was the writing process first? Is that it's your first book, right?
It's my first book, and because it's sort of a progression from the English Nut, I was already doing a lot of research into this subject. And writing, I think, is something that comes very naturally to me. It's not like a huge effort. And so since when on the English Nut, I largely script everything out. I was telling you earlier that I'm a person who believes in over-preparing.
So we're exactly the opposite.
Yeah, we're opposite of each other. So, So scripting videos for the English Nut, from that it was a natural progression to, and for that also I research everything, because you can't just, sort of Google something and then because there's a lot of fake information out there. We talk about fake news. In the world of etymology, there's something called folk etymology, which is just interesting stories. So just for example, and especially in the year 2000 or so, those days email was big, and this email went out which was titled Life in the 1500s.
Okay.
And it was about medieval England, and like a lot of things like for example, this word, you would have heard the phrase saved by the bell, and the phrase a dead ringer. And there were these wild and wonderful theories in that email that dead ringer comes from in the old days, sometimes people who were buried were not actually dead. And there's a little bit of truth in that, because it did happen in those days, because somebody may have been comatose or uh, in
But it was like an exception. It was like a one.
yeah, once. So,
one
and they did find, like, at times scratches on the inside of a coffin. But what? So this theory was that they made a hole in the coffin and they would tie a string to the finger of the corpse,
Yeah.
and the other end of the string would be attached to the bell, the church bell.
Okay.
And dead ringer was supposedly came from that. When the dead person suddenly actually came to life and started moving, the bell would start ringing.
But it was not rigor mortis.
No, this is, I guess, well after rigor mortis. But there was nothing. This never happened. This thing about tying the string and all, it never happened. But this was a fake theory, a folk etymology put across by the mischievous person who wrote this email, saying that this is how it happened. But that's not what a dead ringer is. Ringer actually is another alternate English word for copy. And dead is like when you say dead center, it means the exact center. So dead ringer is exact copy, and it actually comes from horse racing, where sometimes, because people bet on horses. So sometimes there might be a slow horse, and somebody might replace that slow horse with an identical looking fast horse, and that completely upsets all the betting, and the people who thought they were going to win end up losing, and somebody else makes the money. So that horse was called a dead ringer.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. And so also an adjunct of this was that the person who was given the task of keeping watch at the graveyard at night to see if this bell suddenly starts ringing, this was called the graveyard shift. This is also not true. Graveyard shift simply because security people working, or anybody working in the wee hours of the night when things are very quiet. It was as silent as a graveyard in Western countries.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from. So yeah. And Saved by the Bell also was supposed to be that, because when it started ringing and that person who was keeping watch on the graveyard shift would quickly then open up the coffin and save the person who was inside. So that was supposed to be Saved by the Bell, but Saved by the Bell actually comes from boxing, where a boxer, when a boxer is knocked down, there's a count to 10. If the person does not get up within the count of 10, then they've lost that round. But what happens is sometimes the end of that round is announced by a bell, and if that comes before that count to 10, then that person gets a reprieve, because he still has a little bit more time to get up.
He gets saved by the bell. Literally.
He gets saved by the bell. So it's not that supposed corpse coming to life and getting saved by the bell being rung, the church bell being rung by his finger, and somebody keeping the graveyard shift, opening the coffin. So yeah.
So I don't know what happened out of that email going out to a whole bunch of people, but you got a lot of content for your page, for sure.
Yes,
if
I
nothing else.
Yes,
And you got really deep into research. And I love it. I think, when when I was a young student as well, I was always going to debates or quizzes, or just had this knack for learning and just this crazy curiosity about just wanting to know everything that was happening. And I, at least in my case, attribute that very largely to Calcutta and to growing up in Calcutta, because there were scopes of conversations where it was encouraged to know more about the next person. It was something that people would look at you with some kind of reverence or newfound enthusiasm when they learned, oh, he looked at beshi jane. And that person knows there's a sense of reverence. But when you start traveling around the rest of the country, this is not there at all. Like people don't really, get pride out of, being good at a language or not being a linguistic embarrassment, as you'd probably put it. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I do agree with you, and I want to add to what you're saying about childhood in Kolkata, growing up in Kolkata, is the inculcation of the love for books. So in my house, I lived in this old house which had one huge room called the library ghar, which was literally that. It was floor to ceiling shelves filled with books. It was my father's study, so he would sit at his huge desk, which was probably passed down from generations, and I remember he used to smoke a pipe, and I used to love on my holidays to sit on that red oxide floor, and there was one particular bookshelf where all the kids' books had been put, and these are kids' books from my older brothers, from my parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents. So, there were books from generations over there. So I finished reading all those books. And then I, started reading the books which were, more adult. But, and if birthday gifts for us meant only books.
Yeah.
So
for
whether,
most people here in Calcutta, I think the first...
Which is not the case. So, when I moved to Bombay many years ago, the first thing that struck me was I used to visit people's houses and I'd look around for the bookshelf and there was none. And I'd say, where's your bookshelf? They said, and,
people have bookshelves?
Yeah, and maybe they had like 3 books in the house. So, to me, this was a real shock,
Yeah.
because I think even today, I think in most Bengalis' houses, there will at least be a bookshelf, right?
A decent 50, 60 books, if not more. I mean, you would have accumulated at least that many books in your lifetime. And that's not a very cultured person. If you have 50, 60 books in Calcutta, that's not a very cultured... but it's interesting then you think about books being such an intrinsic part of our growing up days. What other factors do you think contributed to this crazy love that you have for, knowing more about the language?
So I think part of it is, I don't know, I just had a natural curiosity because when every time I would come across a new word, I would try to guess its meaning. I would go to my parents and harass them about it. And I would actually try to kind of guess its origin or why. Sometimes you'd come across a word like the word mum and ma. Like as a child, I wondered why are they so similar? They're in 2 different languages. Or mother and mata are also similar. So from that, then my parents, bought me a dictionary, and then I started realizing that, Indo-European, which is the root of Sanskrit and Latin, and that all
and
these
Germanic languages and
how they're all connected, and that was like a fascinating discovery for me.
You were basically a natural-born linguistic anthropologist.
Possibly.
That just happened without you realizing.
But again, it's because of the books and the the sort of the academic atmosphere. By the way, I also come from that cliche Bengali family where I'm the only non-academic in my entire family. Everybody else is a professor.
Who are you at dinner table conversations getting?
No, among my brothers and cousins, I'm the only non-PhD.
Okay. So you had to compensate for that by becoming a successful content creator and getting 100,000 followers. It's like that's how you pay back for not doing a PhD.
Yeah, no, I mean for example, I've written this book about it's a subject that a linguistic
anthropologist
expert would tackle. So I can just imagine people among my extended family saying, but he doesn't even have a PhD in linguistics. How has he written
this? Oh, what a shame you don't have a PhD.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I'm not dissing PhDs at all, but sometimes it's still possible to research a subject without getting a PhD in it.
Let's come to storytelling through time. I mean, at the end of now, you're actually you're practicing storytelling in 2 different ways: the visual media and the written form. How do you think a love for storytelling has been built into you through that, or how can you attribute your maybe love for modeling or acting or whatever else that you were doing, which are all different ways of storytelling, through your past experiences, perhaps in advertising?
Yes. No, very much so, because in advertising, we are doing storytelling. You tell a story about a brand and a product, because people don't always react they don't warm up to dry facts. So it's
human beings don't like facts. Statistics are boring.
Yeah. Human beings our brains are hardwired for story. So only when something is presented as a story, Do we warm up to it? Are we able to absorb it and remember it? So in advertising, our job always was to, when you're writing, whether you're writing in fact, a lot of people would be surprised. Acha, TV commercial, what do you do? I said, I write that script. There's a script that's written for that ad that you're seeing. Like if a movie has a script, an ad also has a script. So that is very much storytelling, and unless you're telling a story about your brand that engages the consumer, they're just going to switch off, because they're just going to flip channels or whatever, skip the ad, whatever it is. So so I think that storytelling and knowing that I've got to. I think that's the difference from an academic who does very noble research, but they're not so concerned about, is this going to appeal to my reader?
Is it palatable for the reader?
That's not their approach. Whereas for an advertising copywriter, it's ingrained in us, even if we don't want to, you're always thinking, okay, how do I get the person to read from the first line to the second and the second to the third, and how do I get them to read to the last line? So that is definitely an aspect of storytelling which one learns and which becomes a part of you in advertising.
I think there's that one ad you had done for Cadbury where Shah Rukh Khan says, Bengal, the sweetest part of India.
That was for Bengal Tourism.
Oh, that was for Bengal Tourism.
Yes.
So that was not for Cadbury at all.
No.
Why did I attribute that
Because
to
we were
Cadbury?
talking about Cadbury.
Oh, because we were talking about Cadbury as your client. I apologize. But I think since
and Shah Rukh Khan has done many Cadbury's ads as well.
See,
Yes.
I apologize.
No,
There was
no, not
brain
at all.
fart moment.
Yeah.
But I think our team has been looking forward to having you on the podcast so we can chat and get to know more about that. Tell us about a few of your favorite ads that you've done that people might not know. This one we do know.
Yeah.
Although I did misattribute it to something else, but tell us a few more about the ones that-
the first, since you brought up the sweetest part of India, that's how I'm here today, right? Because one day I started following Make Calcutta Relevant Again, and I saw this video that you guys had done, and I suddenly saw a clip from this ad which I created with Shah Rukh Khan, and where the slogan was Bengal, the sweetest part of India. And I wrote a comment saying, hey, I created this ad.
How cool.
And I wrote this line. And that's how, I think Titash reached out to me after that.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I was very proud of that. I was very happy when this brief came to us. It was a pitch, because when you do a tourism campaign for any tourism board in India, multiple agencies are called.
Of course, and then they have to do a tender and stuff,
Yeah,
right? I think
yeah, all of that.
it's government
And
money at the end of the
but
day.
one thing that one of the things that we've learned in advertising, particularly when it comes to things like tourism, it's the slogan that wins you the. So I came up with this thing. To me, it just seemed to fit Bengal so well, the sweetest part of India. And of course, then we created this entire campaign around it. But that is what was really liked by the tourism department, and that's how we got the campaign. And they wanted Shah Rukh Khan to be a part of it, because he was in a way already a
brand ambassador
for the state.
And, for the state.
So then we got. So in fact, in the original script, he was not there. Then we found a way of bringing
Of incorporating him into
him.
just for the slogan, or was he part of the bigger campaign?
No. So I think just at so we had brought him in a very organic way. So it's of course it's a montage of this young woman from some European country who's traveling through Bengal. It starts with she's attending a wedding, a traditional Bengali wedding in Kolkata, and then you see her going to other towns, to beaches, to Darjeeling and all of that. And then at the end, it kind of comes back to Kolkata, and she gets, it's on the Maidan, and she runs and catches a tram. She jumps onto the tram, and she sees there's a shoot going on, and Shah Rukh Khan is acting in that film, and he does that typical, he does
like
that
move
with her, and then after that he says Bengal, the sweetest part of India. That's the product part of the ad. Yeah, so this is definitely one of the campaigns that I'm very happy that I did, and I don't think that anything of this quality was done before that. And I think it still survives today, and it's got millions of views.
And it sticks somehow. I think
Yeah.
even since the ad came out,
Yeah.
it gets referenced so much. It's like
Yeah.
a very good paper that gets,
Yeah.
spoken about so many times in
Right.
different ways and forms.
Yeah.
I have a question here with you before you talk about your other ads that
Yeah.
you've done. The Make Calcutta Relevant Again movement was started with the purpose of changing the narrative around the city. And there is, you live in Bombay, that in most cases we see our city sort of written off in popular culture or in parlance, and that Kolkata Kiju Hobe Na. There's that sort of sense of impending doom about whatever the city is, or it's a city of old people. One, whether if you agree with it or not, or is it just something that you think it's chatter? Two, if you do agree with it, as a brand person or as a person from the world of advertising, what would you do to rebrand Calcutta?
So I think, first of all, I think that there is some conscious propaganda in other parts of the country against Kolkata. Very sad to say, but that's the reality today. And it's fashionable now to criticize Kolkata, Bengalis. So I think that's something that I feel very strongly about, and I fight with a lot of people on social media about this.
We're gonna like all of your comments whenever you go and fight on it. We'll add fuel to the
but
fire.
I get really a little very, very aggressive and obnoxious about it sometimes, because I feel that to counter those people at times you have to be. Yes, there are some. I mean, every place has its limitations, and I do see. I've worked in Kolkata and Bombay. Bombay is more dynamic I'm talking about from working in advertising perspective, because there is a lot more advertising business out there.
All kinds of business.
Yeah,
of course.
of-
And if
all
the business
kinds.
is happening, it will
So,
require more.
everything, and so there's a lot of work, and it all has to be done overnight. So also, I mean, this is one difference that I saw when I moved from Kolkata. In Kolkata, you go and you need something for a shoot, and you go to a supplier and they say Shamne Saptahe Ashun. I've had and then you go to Kolkata, Bombay, and you ask for something. I need 10 elephants tomorrow morning at 6. They say mil jayega. Also, I think because it's the center of the Bollywood film industry,
Yeah.
so they're used to
Bizarre requests.
and they can put together things,
Yeah, yeah.
but also whether they can or cannot deliver the first sort of responses, ho jayega, mil jayega.
Yeah.
Whereas in Kolkata, I have found that people tend to say Hobe Na or Shomai lagbe, rather than first saying the positive and then seeing how fast you can do it. So yeah, so there is that. But having said that, it's not that everything is negative. There are people who are doing fantastic work in the city. I was part of Ogilvy, and the Ogilvy Kolkata team, which I'm also very proud, because I sort of had really nurtured that team over years. And they are so good that they are called upon to do work for the other offices, like in Bangalore, Bombay, and Delhi. So I think there are a lot of talented people in this city, and that there's a lot of talent which needs to be harnessed. And I think that if industry and business grow in this city, automatically all this will also start flourishing more. And I see people. I mean, I think you're part of this whole movement as well. So I think that more of us who actively try to make Kolkata relevant again, it definitely has the potential. It was fantastic, and there's still a lot of fantastic things about the place, and I think it can get a whole lot better, and I think we can all contribute to that.
So to counter the negative news, you have to create positive news. I mean, that's also, and it's also not even creating from scratch, right? You're just giving a bit of focus on things that are already happening. We're not creating anything out of the blue here. This is not, like creating those 10 elephants out of the blue that you said.
Yeah.
It's genuinely good things happen. It's also a big city. There's so much happening. Sometimes it requires maybe context for people from outside to even understand or appreciate some of the things that happen here. Not all of the rest of the country was built on the same ideals. And
But just to give an example, when Durga Puja got the UNESCO tag, I think it made such a difference. I've had friends in Bombay who have then made a trip to Kolkata during Durga Puja, and they're blown away because there is nothing like this anywhere in the country. It's something unique in the world.
In the world, there's nothing.
And I'm not a religious person at all, but I marvel at Durga Puja just for the artistry
Yeah, exactly.
involved in it. I mean,
it's the world's largest public art festival.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
democratic, it's accessible to all, and it's,
Yeah.
you know.
And I just, I feel that the only thing I feel bad about is that, that it all gets dismantled because it's so fantastic. I feel that some of it should get, and it should go on a road show around the world,
We actually did something like that very
Yeah.
interestingly. You
Yeah.
mentioned about it going around the world. So our students here at Techno India, they made Durga Ma. Every year, they actually, for the last 4 years now, they've been making an idol of Durga Ma and putting it in the main lobby. I'll show you a couple of them. They're there. And the one from last year, actually, we took it to the UK and we put it on a boat and put it on the Thames, and we got the Tower Bridge to open for it. And they were you must have seen
I've
this
seen
video.
this.
That's a video that I made.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
That's
So,
fantastic.
and that became like a global moment of culture because suddenly you were exporting an idea which is very hard to explain to people outside
Yeah.
in its truest form, but in a global context, and that sort of created a lot of conversation around it. And it was not just that. From then we took it to a shopping mall in Petersburg that was placed there for 3 months. It was at the University of Arts London where it was placed for 2 months, and now it's going to be part of the Kingston River Festival that's going to happen this year.
Wow.
So now it's making the world tour with the
So
Ma Durga,
exactly, so-
right? And we need to find ways and means of rebranding that as well. I've always struggled to see that people around me talking about the Durga Puja in a very fragmented fashion, which
Yeah.
does not make a lot of sense unless you've grown up in Calcutta. How do you explain a religious festival like that to somebody? How do you explain a cultural festival?
Yeah.
But art is easy to access, and that's why it makes a lot of sense talking about Durga Puja from the artistic angle.
Yes.
So when you finally look at the Durga Puja from the arts angle, suddenly it's a lot easier to explain to somebody who does not have the context of a Dashabhuja and Durgati Nashini, right? So it's a lot easier to explain. Finally, এখন আমরা গিয়ে দেখছি কিন্তু যে দুর্গা পুজোটাকে এক্সপ্লেন করে একটা to create a global moment of culture, we're getting closer to that. এটার জন্য কিন্তু অনেকটা ব্র্যান্ডিং প্রয়োজন হয়েছে। প্রত্যেক বছর আমরা দুর্গাপুজোর ঠিক আগে we create this platform called Preview Puja, where people from around the world, people of culture, can come and experience the Durga Puja without the craziness of it, without the dhakka-dhakki or millions of people on the street, and with explanations from the artists who've actually worked on the Durga Puja. So এইটা কিন্তু লাস্ট 4 বছর ধরে হচ্ছে। এই বছর আমাদের 5th year বোধহয়. And the state is very involved in that. A whole bunch of art lovers are involved in that, and hopefully with all of those instances we'll be able to truly showcase the Durga Puja for what it is, as the world's largest public art festival. তাই বলে যে সবাই খুব খুশি হয় আমাদের কমেন্ট সেকশনে এই ব্যাপারটা নিয়ে একদমই নয়। হাজারটা কমেন্ট এটা নিয়ে যে তোমরা তো দুর্গা পুজোটাকেও বেছে দিলে, হ্যাঁ এটাকেও আর্ট ফেস্টিভ্যাল বানিয়ে দিলে, এটা তো আমাদের মায়ের, এটা থেকে নোবডি ইজ টেকিং অ্যাওয়ে ফ্রম ইট।
Right.
We don't have to have sweeping generalization for everything, right? এটা ওটা বলেই এটা নয় এরকম তো কোনো মানে নেই। It can exist in both forms.
Yes.
So এটাই তো মোটামুটি দুর্গাপুজোর গল্পটা।
Huh. No, so another thing, because we were talking about the fact that there is a negativity about the city, even from people outside Kolkata at times, which, so I had this experience where somebody I just know through social media reached out to me in my inbox saying that, that this person said that I feel really depressed with the kind of comments that I sometimes hear about my city, about Bengalis. He said, I feel so upset, I sometimes want to leave the country. So I told him two things. I said that, this is a phase. This phase too shall pass. And secondly, he said, what should I do? I said that, you just have to excel in whatever it is you do. If we all, as people from Kolkata, excel in what we do, that's what's going to make Kolkata great and Kolkata relevant.
That I love that. নিজেরা নিজের কাজটা ভালো করে করো. There's no আর যদি আমরা বাঙালিরা বা আমরা কলকাতাবাসীরা whoever we are, naturalized Calcuttans as well, if we diss our own city while being in Calcutta, then don't stay here, then go find something else to do, go somewhere else. But there's no point of staying here and then also saying না এখানে এটা হয় না ওটা হয় না, তাহলে তো হবে না. বাইরে থেকে যখন লোকজন বলছে, I feel really sad about it, and I feel like we should actually actively create more opportunities where we can help people come back, especially if there is an intent to come back. আর আমাদের এই ঘরে ফেরার মানসিকতাটা তো বোধহয় আছেই এমনি আমাদের মধ্যে. আফটার সার্টেন এজ উই অলওয়েজ ফিল না ঠিক আছে বাড়ি ফিরে যাই, দেখি কি হচ্ছে আমার কলকাতা শহরে. সো দ্যাটস দ্যাট, ওই টানটা মায়ের টানটা রয়েই গেছে. আই থিঙ্ক দেল অলওয়েজ বি দেয়ার. রিব্র্যান্ডিং এর কথা একটু বলো, যে তুমি যদি if Kolkata was your client, and it's not the government, it's the people of Kolkata representing its soul. If that was your client as a collective, তুমি কি করতে as somebody who's been very successful in advertising, how would you rebrand the city?
So I think that I would go and find the most unusual, quirkiest citizens of Kolkata who are doing completely offbeat, interesting things in a very they're very talented, they're very good at it, and it's something that many people don't know about. I would find those people and I would put them on a platform. I would
So basically create the Make Calcutta Relevant Again podcast. আমরা তো এটাই করি.
Okay.
This is
so maybe I think that because it's the people who make the city. So I think so you're doing a fantastic job. I don't need to come in and do anything more.
No, we can host a show. People from Calcutta's characters are incredible, and I think you're very right. যে যারা শহরটা তৈরি করে তারা তো মানুষ at the end of the day.
Not only that, I mean, you've in the past one has seen and one sees from time to time somebody who's comes from a very humble background. They may be like they may ride a rickshaw or drive a taxi, and they will suddenly talk to you about films by some of the great filmmakers of the world, or they talk to you about literature. This rarely happens in any other city in India. So I think if we could find those people and make them famous, along with them a city would also become more famous in a positive way. So again, it's what you're doing, but more of that,
more. Just that it has to be more, hundreds more of these initiatives that come out at the end of the day. That would create enough critical mass that people start talking about it. আমাকে কেউ একটা কিছুদিন আগে জিজ্ঞেস করছিল যে তুই যে করিস এই যে পডকাস্টটা and all this movement, what's the end of it? এটা কি কোনোদিন will Kolkata ever be relevant? Somebody had said. I was like, well, I am not in it for a short term game at all. এটা তো আমার জীবনকালে নাই হতে পারে, হ্যাঁ হয়তো নেক্সট দুটো জেনারেশনেও না হতে পারে, বাট তাই বলে কি প্রচেষ্টা করবো না? With all the privilege and the network and the resources I have, if I can bring around some good, at least 10 people more talking about good things that happened in the city, I would happily do that. And I'm guessing in your own way you're doing that as well, and all of us in our own ways are doing
absolutely.
that. So.
And it's an ongoing effort. It's a work in progress. And as I said, more and more people have to participate in that work in progress. And like you said, critical mass will then happen. And then Calcutta will become relevant.
Will become relevant in whatever way.
And I think it still is relevant in many ways. So, but I just think that shine may have gone off. So I think you bring the shine on, it suddenly everything seems to fall into place, and all the little endeavors all come together and create this image of something that's wonderful.
And just thinking out loud, I would love to do a segment where we create some kind of content together on words that are very specific to Calcutta. Would be very cool to do an English nut and Make Calcutta Relevant Again. We love our language. We speak the Queen's English like no other place in the country. Right? Sheikhantai, it would act for a very nice segue for conversations with people. If you're open to something like that, I'd be very happy to.
In fact, at my book launch, which happened recently in Kolkata, Anubhav Pal was a part of it, and he brought up this word sanguine.
Sanguine.
Yeah, which is which is an English word, but it takes on a whole different kind of sheen and a whole different connotation when Bengalis use it. First of all, it's a word. It's a high-end word, so to say.
Right.
You won't find regular people anywhere else in the world, I think, using it.
Using
But
sanguine.
Bengali, even while speaking sanguine.
We must get Anubhav also on this podcast.
Yeah.
He's a huge Calcutta lover
Yeah.
and somebody who's made comedy very accessible for a lot of people. Back when comedians were far and far in between and not
Yes.
that many in number. We actually run a comedy club in Calcutta as well.
Okay.
Top Cat Retired Comedy Club. So we had a conversation with Anubhav about that, but unfortunately he hasn't been on the podcast yet. So this is a social contract to bring Anubhav back.
And I was just speaking about the fact that he was at my book launch, and on that note, I would like to
Oh, nice
give you
segue into the book as well.
yeah, give you a copy of my book. So
Sure, please. Stories of words and
so
phrases.
this is the book, Stories of Words and Phrases.
Yes.
It's my labor of love, and I think that it's of interest to anybody, but I think that there are many lovers of language and lovers of English in this city, and I think it will be appreciated. And you said that you are one yourself.
Very much so.
I would like to...
Grammar Nazi Pro Max. Like, since I've been a kid. It's got a foreword by Shashi Tharoor, I hear.
Yes, it's got a foreword by Shashi Tharoor.
Of course.
and-
Why am I not surprised?
And Ruskin Bond has also written a few very nice words.
Amazing.
Yeah, so yeah, I've been privileged to have. The secret is I interviewed both of them for the English Nut, so which is why I was able
Alright.
to request them to do this for me.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Okay, I look forward to seeing what they say. How was the conversation with both of them while you're signing the
Yes,
book?
so when I went to interview Shashi Tharoor, I referred to him as because I'm the English Nut, and I called him the Big Daddy of English Nuts. So he was a little taken aback by it. But it was a great conversation. I still remember, he'd granted the request without really knowing much about me. And when he came into the room, though his manager had said, you have 1 hour, he said, oh, I just have 20 minutes. But he warmed up so much to the conversation that he gave me all the time in the world. And I talked about over preparing. So I watched all his interviews, and I was determined that I will not ask him any questions that have ever been asked by anybody else. So I think that's what made it.
That made it interesting?
That made it interesting and different.
So so that more people from this podcast go back and watch that interview you did with Dr. Tharoor, what was the question that he appreciated the most hearing?
So I wouldn't say there was any one particular question that he appreciated, but let me say what I appreciated about him as a human being and as a politician in India, that, I gave him a quiz. He had to answer questions, and he didn't know the answers to many of the questions because I of course had researched everything, so I obviously knew.
You're over-prepared.
And, what I really appreciated was he had no problem being shown to be wrong about something. Like he got an answer wrong, and I said, this is wrong, this is the correct. So he was absolutely fine with that. I mean, I can imagine most people from India, most public figures, and especially from the world of politics, would say, no, can we please
edit that
out. So he did not do that. So I think that really shows a bigness on his part, which is what I appreciated about him the most. Let me quickly sign that.
I will continue asking questions.
Yeah, please do.
While you're at it, how was the conversation with Ruskin Bond? I did have a pleasure of meeting him. It was in a public context though, but what a teddy bear of a man.
Yeah.
That's the only
You've hit the nail on the head. That's just the word. He's such a teddy bear of a man.
That's the only
he's
thing
such
I
a
had.
Sweetheart,
Such
and
a
he was like
cutie.
such a grandfatherly figure.
Such a cutie.
That and I'm a person who's not at all prone to hero worshipping or I don't get very excited by celebrity, but I still remember that his grandson and I were on a call too, because they actually saw the Shashi Tharoor interview and wanted me to interview Ruskin
So
Bond.
he reached out. His son reached out.
His grandson.
Oh, grandson
Yeah, so
reached out.
I was on the phone to him, and suddenly he put his grandfather on the line, which was Mr. Ruskin Bond, and I heard his voice, which I'd heard so many times because, again, I'd watched all his interviews as well. And that was like that moment. I had a moment then. I was so excited. Like I was like felt like a little kid.
Yeah.
Like for me, he was a hero at that point.
For all of us, he still is. I think there is.
But what I'm saying is that I just don't like look up to heroes as such. And I don't think, I don't have that hero worshipping kind of thing in me. But I did at that moment in time. And when I met him and I talked to him, it was absolutely delightful. His family had said, he's doesn't keep well, and you have to give him a lot of breaks, and he won't be able to speak for too long. Don't ask him to read from anything. But first of all, we started, he didn't want to stop. Like he was forced to stop. We broke for lunch because his grandson, no, you have to eat lunch now. And, I asked him to read not only from his books, read out his poems. And I had seen that in the other interviews he gave, whenever he was asked to read one of his poems, for example, he would say, no, he would tell the interviewer, please read it. So I told him, I said, look, people are not interested in me reading out your poem. They would
I could
want
do that
to
on my
see
show anyway.
you recite your own poem. And he obliged. Whatever I asked him to recite, he recited that. And I mean, it was just wonderful. Not only that, one of his favorite books, which he's talked about in his autobiography, was David Copperfield. So I told him, please read out one of your favorite passages from that. So I got him to do that as well. So I was very, very happy. And the other thing was that any author, we obviously were talking about a lot of his favorite authors, and he knew and remembered so much detail, not only about their books, but about their lives and things which I didn't know. Somebody who, one author I'm forgetting, who, went to Mexico, and then he disappeared because he was shot dead over there. Nobody knows why. So things like that, he obviously reads up a lot about his favorite authors, and he knows a lot about them. So yeah, it was really fun talking to him.
Thank you so much, Sumanto, for joining us on this episode of Make Calcutta Relevant Again, the podcast. And thank you for that book, which is now being signed, a special copy. We'll leave it. We'll actually put it on the bookshelf here, so all the people who come here, they can also take a look at it, or we'll put it on this table.
More people that read it.
Yes, but after I have taken my turn at reading it. Hopefully, we keep our endeavors of bringing the best to the podcast, while people like Shumanto, thank you so much. No, really appreciate that. Creator of the English Nut, Sumanta Chattopadhyay. You can come. Amazing. While people like Shumanto keep bringing us amazing content on our screens and keep enriching our vocabulary of the Queen's English, which we pride ourselves so much in Calcutta, at least, speaking of. On that note, again, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. And to all of our viewers who are watching the podcast and who keep supporting us, take a note from what Shumanto said today. I think a lot of the onus on making our city relevant and keeping it relevant, it's not a one-time thing. It does not happen that way, but history will remember us if we bounce back, with all of you doing very, very well in whatever you choose to do, and make that your own legacies. And altogether, we shall make Calcutta relevant again. This is Meghdut signing off. Seeing you at the next episode.
Make Calcutta relevant again. You already know. Relevant again.